Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and children of all ages, we're back and we're bad. Bad boys for life. It's kind of ironic considering what's going on currently with P. Diddy. I still like the shirt though. Today we're going to talk about Karens. Now, if you've watched social media and all the memes and everything, you know what a Karen is. If you don't, Google it. It'll explain it in a heartbeat. Wasn't until a few years ago that I realized my mother was the original Karen. She had the short hair, she had the attitude, and she was your atypical narcissist. Now, growing up, I didn't know any of this stuff. I didn't have Google, I didn't have access to the computers and stuff, and I just thought this was normal. You didn't ask a whole lot of questions. Now, growing up in my household, we weren't poor, we weren't rich, we were middle to upper middle class. Lived out in a rural community called Parker Shop just outside of El Dorado, Arkansas, and it's where some of the up and coming wannabe affluents lived. We mainly lived there because the schools were better. My older brother, who my mother doted on and did anything in the world for, had gotten a car when he graduated, which he proceeded to wreck about a half a dozen times before it finally got totaled. So upon my coming up on my senior year, typical kid, my brother got it, I kind of expected. And we started looking around for cars for me. We looked all over, and my mom kept going toward these family mobiles. It looked like I was ready to take everybody and their cousin to the grocery store, which I later found out she got mad at me for the vehicle I picked because, well, I couldn't tote my grandparents around like they need to be since they can't drive anymore. And I further found out it was because she didn't want to drive them. Well, because of the car I picked, the funny thing is the car I picked was cheaper than all the ones she was pointing at, and since she didn't like what I was picking, she proceeded to crawl my backside 6 different ways from Sunday and tell me, well, you're going to have to pay half then, because that car's expensive. And I knew better. I'd already seen the price tags. Mine were about 5 to 10 grand cheaper than what she was pointing out, these family Oldsmobiles, which no teenager wants. Now, as a grown man, I appreciated a couple of them, but I didn't want a full-size 18-foot long John boat. Didn't want no big-ass cars. I found this little car that I liked, a Nissan Pulsar NXSE, 5 on the floor. Little stick shift. Now, there was reasons behind me wanting this stick shift. Number one, it was cool. It was a little sporty, had some T-tops in it, and it was stick shift. My brother couldn't drive stick shift, and I could drive it better than anybody. Because since my brother kept wrecking his cars, my mother made the comment right before we got me my new car, well, if your brother wrecks the car he's in, he'll just take yours. And so I purposely picked a stick shift where he couldn't drive it. And when I got accused of it, I proceeded to ask her, are you going to pay for the gas? Aren't stick shifts cheaper on gas? That's the reason I'm getting it. I lied. I lied through my teeth because my brother, before he graduated high school, had probably had close to a dozen wrecks that we knew of, that he couldn't hide. And this is no exaggeration. Anybody that knew him knew he had umpteen million wrecks. In fact, he had a nickname called A.J. Foyt. A.J. Foyt was a driver back in the 70s and 80s that totaled every race car he ever drove and drove 90 to nothing, even though the car couldn't do 90 to nothing. Now, with that being said, once I got the car, my mother says, all right, you need to start giving me money. Now, back then, minimum wage was all of $3.25 an hour, and I was making $4 an hour, pulling 40 hours a week going to high school. Yeah, I wasn't the greatest student, and I really didn't care as long as I graduated. I wanted out of that hellhole. But at $40 a week, $40 an hour, or $4 an hour, 40 hours a week. Let's see. I was making $160 a paycheck. I had to give my mother $100 a paycheck. I was giving her $400 a month. All right. Now, that went on until we sold the house out in Parker Chapel and moved out to Texas. Now, a few years after that, I'd done gotten rid of that car, and my mom and dad were in the middle of a divorce. And it was getting nasty because my mother, the original Karen, the ultimate narcissist, was making it nasty. Until my father started asking me a few questions and pointing some stuff out in their financial records that I never knew. See, my mother made it sound like they were paying month to month on this car. They weren't. They had taken a second mortgage out on the house, taken what you'd call kind of like a payday loan. Let's just say property prices in Parker Chapel went through the roof, and a house that we built for $80,000 on probably $10,000-$15,000 worth of land was worth over $2,000, and they took enough money out and bought that car lock, stock, and barrel. There was no monthly payment. In fact, because of that, my insurance was a whole lot lower. They were only paying $100 a month. $100 a month extra for my car insurance. Now, let's start off. My brother never paid a single dime on any car he ever got. He never paid for insurance. Hell, he never paid for the gas because he never had a job. But I was paying $400 a month I was paying half of what that car cost him. So I thought car prices were like $800 a month. I was putting all gas in it. My parents were paying the insurance. And anytime there was any kind of maintenance on that car, I paid it on my $60 a week. Now, that's not that extraordinary. It's extraordinary nowadays. But back then, it wasn't extraordinary because back then, I could take $20, take a girl to the movies, get both of us a box of popcorn, a couple of sodas, put a tank full of gas in my car, and still have money to go get a hot dog and a hamburger at the Sonic after the movie was over. And still have change in my pocket at the end of the night after getting a good night kiss. We didn't find out until that divorce that I was basically giving my mother money for 3 years at $400 a week, and my father never knew about it. My mother was the original Karen narcissist. Now, these are stories that I'm telling for my grandchildren. My children already know these stories by heart, but I'm telling these stories for my grandchildren. I'm not the type of person that I'm going to paint a pretty picture. I'm the type of person you don't put on speakerphone because I'm going to tell it like it is. If you a low down dirty son of a bitch, I'm not going to call you a nice polite name in public. I'm going to call you a low down dirty son of a bitch. I'm going to call a spade and a narcissist a narcissist. My mother had me under her thumb for years until one day I grew up, stopped caring so much about what she thought, and started doing what I wanted. What this goes to show you folks is just because they family don't mean they blood, don't mean they got your best outlook in life. Because as far as my mother was concerned, I was there to do everything for my brother and for her. I worked for them. Now, funny thing is I only took home about $60 a week before any expenditures and gas and maintenance and heing and sheeing with the girls. I was still able to put about $10,000 away. $10,000 before I moved to Texas. So that doesn't show that I was pissing the money away. And when I found out that my parents weren't needing that money, and I proceeded to ask my mother where all that money went, she suddenly got very ill, got very lightheaded, and I had to leave. She never could answer me those questions over the next 20, 30 years. I'd ask her. What I'm telling you, grandkids, question everything, trust no one, look out for number one, because you're the only one you can trust in the end. Peace, love, and nacho grease. Catch y'all on the flip side. Bad boy for life.